I have a letter here. Let me see if I can find what I want to read. Here it is. Mr. Samuel, I do not belong to a church, and I do not know how to say this to people when they ask me about my study. One who doesn't go to church in this small southern town is looked on as an oddball. I am a merchant with a new business here, and my competitors are happy to tell everyone I am a heathen. Well, so goes the letter. Then in another place down here he says, I know that God is all, but, and I cut it off right there. I won't read the rest of the letter. God is all, but so-and-so is the struggling student's equation. It is an equation, isn't it? God is all, but so-and-so. Well, what do we do about it? We eliminate the but. We go back to the first half of the equation, and we stay there. We hold out there. We hang on there. And if there should be any recurring thought for the second half, we see the second half for its powerlessness. We see the second half for its emptiness, for its illusion. The God is all half of the equation is to be seen as the only authority, the only power, wherein nothing exists to oppose it. You see, God is all eliminates the equation. All right, now admittedly this isn't easy, but it's possible. And the opportunity to prove it, to live it, presents itself over and over, again and again, until we do live it, until we do prove it, until we stop professing it and just talking about it to do it. Well, now over here came then a second letter. Here's the second letter from this gentleman. I have dismarked this part here. He says, Bill Samuel, please be practical. Be practical. Tell me what to say to someone who comes in here asking about my church affiliation. All right. Apparently I didn't answer the question the first time. Now let's just answer the question right here for ourselves. What do we tell people who ask about our church affiliation? Let me make an analogy. If one day you were sitting behind the counter alone and you asked yourself what time it was, what would you do? Well, you would turn around and you'd look at the big clock on the wall behind the pot-bellied stove and you'd tell yourself what time it was. Wouldn't you? Or would you hedge and tell yourself something else? Would you beat around the bush and would you rationalize? Or would you try to translate your reply about what time it was into some kind of metaphysical terminology about the non-existence of time? Or would you just simply look at the clock and tell yourself the truth pertaining to time? Well, obviously you would be honest with yourself, and because if you weren't, you would pay the consequences for your dishonesty. If you told yourself the wrong time, you might get home late for dinner or something. All right, now, suppose in the front door came the image of yourself in the front door. You look up and lo and behold, there you see yourself walking in the front door. And yourself walks in the front door and asks you the same question. What time is it? Well, what would you do? Would you tell him the truth? Would you tell it to him straight, without hedging, without shame or a sense of guilt? Well, of course you would. Finally, let's put it like this. Suppose this is you who walks in the front door and you ask someone what time it is. What sort of an answer do you want? You want it straight. You want it without hedging. You want it without a sense of shame or a sense of guilt. All right now, the advantages of this kind of honesty, I think we can all see, would be certain to make themselves evident in tangible ways. And I can assure you that those tangible ways would be far superior to any evidences that we might think we could manufacture by hedging or telling half-truths, or trying to convert it into metaphysical language. Now the fact is, we really do live alone as the single selfhood. What we call others are not separate nor apart from us. The folks we talk to or who come to talk to us are aspects of this one we are. And we can be as honest with them as we would be to ourselves. And I can tell you that we had better be if we would have that image be honest with us. Well, now at this point in our study, it is not important whether the image out there appears to be honest with us or not. It is only important that we here, as I, are absolutely honest with them, which is to be honest with ourselves. We concern ourselves with the beam in this eye, and this eye includes our words to them. You see, if the image out there appears to be dishonest, that is the image's responsibility, and it is their barn that appears to need shoveling. All right. Any wavering equanimity that we may experience at the moment by being absolutely honest can only be the apparent consequences of our dishonesty, which we end. How do we end it? Why? By identifying as the perfect and only identity in all being, the deific identity, which is incapable of dishonesty, and then acting as that identity. And to act as that identity is most certainly not to act as one who hedges or distorts or lies or twists or withholds about anything at all, ever to the best of his ability. And of course that ability really is infinite. Neither does this one act as one who says God is all, while still viewing himself as some sort of an old inadvertent liar struggling to become more honest. In all honesty, right here, right now, isn't honesty simply being itself, honesty? Do we have to arrive at it bit by bit, line upon line, precept upon precept, or do we just not, or don't we just start being honest? Well, now, being honest is to act it. It is to act as the honesty that is the very identity we are. Well, If out of old habit, out of old patterns of action, if nothing else, the old liar of us, the old nature of us, hangs on tenaciously. Of course it does. To perpetuate itself, you see, it utilizes every means at its disposal. And I can tell you that one of the most insidious ways that the old nature of us would hang on comes as the belief that suffering is for our instruction. That suffering is for our instruction. Oh, how many times I have seen this theme presented, even in the most absolute presentation, that suffering is for our instruction. Never was this so. Never, never. This is a very comforting thought, of course. It is a means whereby we can look on suffering in a new light, and that serves its purpose. And there is a time when all of us have come to see this point and believe it and be comforted by it. But to believe that suffering is really for our instruction has us doing nothing but justifying the liar's existence. A temporary palliative, maybe, but it is a palliative that glues that liar to us onto virtual insanity. Even while we are professing the liar's impossibility in the name of the Absolute. You see, the liar suffers. The liar suffers. The liar, that is, appears to suffer. But only the liar suffers. And that one is not us. The liar is not us. The liar has never been us. Identity has never suffered, and it never will. It is our knowledge that we are not the sufferer that allows us to put its illusions aside and see them as what they are first. And then when we can see them as what they are, then we can do with them or for them or to them as seems sensible. Subtle point, but it's significant that we get it. All right, now let's go on to other matters. Just let somebody write something that titillates the ego, you know, by giving the intellect something really to wrestle with, something to really struggle with, something very mysterious, mystical, and deeply absolute. And you will soon see that statement praised to high heaven and probably made into the basis for a cult of one sort or another. But let the statement actually communicate, actually touch the heart, and say what it says. And of course, because it does touch the heart and say what it says and allow one to feel the release and to be the truth that one is, the statement itself goes but barely noticed, as it should, but barely noticed. But if ever that statement is examined for its content, why? Most likely it'll be cut to pieces for its simplicity. And that's the way it works. But it's better, it seems, to quit trying to play up to the intellect with the profound statements that give the intellect some sort of a game to play, and at the very least give this intellect some kind of an erudite or profound morsel that it can heave out at another person in order to impress him and show him how smart we are. We let that go sooner or later in order to really communicate the truth that we are by being the truth that we are. Yes, the truth is subtle and it is perfect. And yes, it's a paradox. There is really a paradox involved. But only to the intellect of us. Only to the sophisticated human nature of us. And it's absolutely true that the intellect should be educated. It is important in the human scheme of things to know how to read and write, how to take care of a garden, or how to enjoy the wonder of things that have no purpose outside their usefulness in our daily affairs. But while the intellect can and within reason should come to understand the nature of things, the images of perception, that same intellect has its limits. Simply because the intellect cannot go beyond the thing. It cannot get beyond the thing, to the idea, to the isness, being the thing. The intellect may certainly come to comprehend the minutiae, the bits and pieces, the building blocks. It may weigh and measure all of those building blocks to whatever length human thinking wants to do it or carry it. But the intellect still hangs in there a little lower than the angels. Yea, yea, and nay, nay, said the young carpenter, who found that too many words would inevitably be woven into a crown of thorns. Present-day science is doing a lot of study now in the field of psychic phenomena. We are not at all likely to arrive at truth by a study of psychic phenomena. However, there is no question but what the honest, persistent study of truth reveals all that needs to be known about these many avenues of the psychic, including the appearance of healings and other extraordinary happenings. We remain wary not to become sidetracked. And never is that sidetracking a greater likelihood than when we find ourselves the possessors of some sort of an extraordinary ability, not the least of which is the ability to prophesy or to heal, or the wildly increased sensibility that inevitably accompanies this work. Everything in my experience has indicated that it is simply a waste to work toward the acquisition of any of these talents. And the reason being because we are likely to be stuck there when they arrive, and they will arrive, as is the case with many a practitioner who thinks that everything has been accomplished by the healing. Or, even more likely, is the fact that we develop a great pride in our ability to do thus and so. And this pride is simply ego food, which makes the ultimate ego surrender, or the necessary ego surrender, just makes it that much more difficult. We acknowledge the finished truth first. We acknowledge the fact of already perfection, here and now the only fact, and then we live it. And then let the sundry psychic presentations come and go, and they, if they should, and they'll come and go as their reasons are uncovered. And this way, or to do it this way, is to not become sidetracked, but to remain, you see, along the very straight and narrow. Oh, I can tell you that there are proofs beyond demonstrations. The intellect of us enjoys tinkering with the truth, as though it were a toy to be played with. The intellect of us isn't really concerned with truth until things in the human experience begin to go awry. The bottom drops out, and then the intellect gets busy and tries to find out what are the causes. Well, the truth isn't worth a tinker's damn to any of us until we surrender everything for it. Everything. I see no halfway. There is no halfway. I see no part-time in this thing. There is no part-time. There is no way to use the truth. Now these ideas, as we expound them here, are capable of stirring one up, of absolutely setting him on fire. These ideas are capable of flipping one's view of the universe upside down, of showing him harmony and happiness where misery did seem before. But this will not happen until we do become wholeheartedly stirred up. That is, until we look into truth with honesty, with earnestness, until we become persistent in our appraisal of it. The admonition was to seek and find. Well, intellectual tinkering is not seeking. Half-hearted efforts merely feed the ego, giving us little gems to impress people with. Half-hearted efforts at very best allow truth to appear to become a crutch intended to work miracles in the affairs of the old nature of us, to solve the old man's problems, to make the old man more comfortable, to make him better supplied. Well, there's another statement that says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." Well, they shall be filled. But it appears to take the hungering and the thirsting. It appears to take being wholeheartedly dedicated. Halfwayness will never make it. The real secret is to live the truth we find ourselves to be, and to live it without mental compromise. And we can do it. We can do it because we are it. We are it. We discover an amazing fact that new light presents itself on the scene as this experience, not from additional reading, additional listening to tapes, additional visiting with other people. Not that those things aren't good, and not that those things do not present a great deal of light. Oh, they do. But the real new light that's given us as tangible experience comes as a consequence of living the light that we've already been given. To live the light as it's presented allows us to appear to receive more light. Of course, the honest way to make this statement is that as we live the light that we are, we see the light we are. To live the light we already are is to see the light we've always been. Children are the teachers that we give birth to, and a child shall lead them. Children teach us all we have forgotten about our own childhood, because children are our childhood. Childhood is pristine and eternal. I could say youth is pristine and eternal, because I mean the same. Childhood is eternal. We live it, and then we learn from it, and then we return to it again. We come home to it again, still blessed, still vibrant, still very much alive. The great wonder of identity revealed as light. The great wonder is always that all of the vibrancy of youth is still here. Always I am amazed, or we are amazed to see that all of the so-called intervening years have done nothing to eliminate it. That all of the trials and tribulations of humanhood have been as nothing. That the youth we are is still present, still alive. Well, the learning period, the period of intellectuality, is an interim adulthood, wherein we try mightily to live all that childhood is not, only to find that it's impossible. Somewhere, I'm sure you've heard these words, lest ye become again as a little child, ye shall in no wise enter the kingdom. So we begin the child, then we try to live the contradistinction, the is not child known as adulthood, or the time of intellectual adultery, only to see that the child is the real, and we come home again. Now listen, there is childlikeness, and then there is childishness. Childishness is the attempt to be the sophisticated, pompous, erudite adult. But childishness teaches us the worth of childlikeness. And we learn that lesson time and again, time and again, time and again, until it's learned. And until that childishness sends us back to childlikeness again, reborn, refreshed, blessed, very much vibrant and very much alive. Oh, I tell you that the child loves the world. The child loves, and I am that child. I am the world that the child loves. Thoreau told the story of nature and his simple love thereof. And it seems that I am here to tell the story of love through the eyes of a child. I'm just rambling, and I hope you'll not mind. But to live this truth as the child, one finds his capacity to love expanding. The sight of a flower, the thought of those that we love, the sound of music, all of these things rush into us and out of us, evoking the warmth of unabashed love, pure love that embraces all and everything and everyone as itself. I was told many times in the East that the teacher is superior to the student. This is a relative statement and is to be understood as a relative statement. We're not here talking on strictly absolute terms. I'm saying here that what appears to be the teacher is superior to what appears to be the student. This is only the appearance. But the point I'm making is that when folks come here, I help them most by letting them be the teacher, the superior teacher. And I benefit most by joying in what they come here to teach me. Love is not fickle. Love doesn't blow warm one day and cold the next. Love is consistently itself. Love looks and lets. Love understands because it is understanding. Love doesn't condemn itself nor anyone else. Love is not guilty. Love is not restricted. It's not bound. It's not confined nor contained. Love is not beholden to any institution. All institutions that appear to exist by virtue of the fact that love is, if indeed they exist at all. Love is not bound by the institution of marriage at all. And it's silly for any of us, whether we appear to be in that institution or out of it, or a part of it or not a part of it, it is silly to believe that that institution is capable of providing us happiness or depriving us of happiness. It simply can't do it. Not really. Not when we see that love, this identity I am, has the dominion. I have been told by many metaphysicians that they could not see the advantages of simplicity, and that they tend toward profundity instead. Well, so mote it be, because I understand perfectly. It was the same with me once, but it isn't that way now, and I have found a new universe. You see, intellectuality fears the experience of equanimity. It fears it. It's afraid of it. This experience of equanimity, which I usually call tranquility or peace or serenity. But intellectuality is afraid of it because it's afraid it will leave one with an attitude of non-productive, non-advancing, non-progressing lethargy. But these fears are expressed only by those who haven't tried it yet, by those who have never seen or experienced the gentle simplicity of singleness. Singleness reveals simplicity. Singleness reveals unity, a coming together, a tying up of all of the loose ends, of the mysteries being answered. The end of paradox, the return to simplicity, does not result in an experience of non-seeing lethargy. Great glory, no. Not no, but hell no. Never. But it just isn't my job to convince anyone of this. I'm not trying to convince anyone of it. It is simply my happy privilege to live it and to tell of it to anybody who happens to come this way, interested. It's amazing how many people will come this way but aren't interested in listening. But whether anybody listens or doesn't listen doesn't make any difference either, because the proofs of healing are everywhere to be seen. But even if they weren't, reality would still be very real. What is the purpose of our study if it isn't to surrender to the awareness that we are and live it? This doesn't end our finding. To do this enables us to find ever more in everything, even in the already beauty of a daisy, in the already beauty of a blade of grass or a single autumn leaf. As you know, I'm not a quoter, because I'm an advocator of each one coming forth with his own words, and living his own ideas, and going within and making his own inside the outside. But if it will help, let me say that Oscar Wilde had this to say about simplicity. He said, life is not complex, life is simple, and the simple thing is the right thing. And about Norman Douglas, these are his words: I can conceive the subtlest and profoundest sage desiring nothing better than to retain, ever undiminished, a childlike capacity for simple pleasures. And boy, there's a mouthful. Winston Churchill said, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word. Walt Whitman, my good friend, Walt Whitman. The art of art, the glory of expression, and the sunshine of the light of letters is simplicity. Nothing is better than simplicity. And Thoreau, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I say let your affairs be as 2 or 3, and not 100 or 1,000. Instead of 1,000,000, count half a dozen, and keep your accounts on your thumbnail. And another one that Winston Churchill made that rather points out this thing of contradistinction. He said, out of intense complexities, intense simplicities emerge. Brooks Atkinson said, like the Sermon on the Mount, the doctrine of simplification is a revolution that any man can begin here and now without joining an organization. It is also a revolution that can be won in 5 minutes or half an hour and costs less than the morning newspaper. Well, God bless Brooks Atkinson. John Morley made this remark: perfect simplicity. No, I'm sorry, he didn't either. Here's his statement: simplicity of character is no hindrance to the subtlety of intellect. The art of art, the glory of expression, and the sunshine of the light of letters is simplicity. That was in Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Imagine that beautiful work having to have a preface in order to explain it. I never receive a gift or give a gift but what I don't reflect again on this unselfish love that giving is. I remember a day a long time ago on a spring walk through the cool mountains here. I stopped to rest by a brook and to take in the beauty of the woods and the new green things along the banks of the stream. On this occasion, my boys weren't with me, nor Ruby. So the sounds of the mountain were more evident than usual. I guess I fell to listening. A long time, I suspect. Well, during the midst of this listening, a buzz of a bee led me to a little small flower hidden along the bank. And I can tell you that then and there, that instant, that blue flower, small as it was, led me into light. As surely as that flower had given its nectar to a bee, in a twinkling it gave its innermost secret to me. I don't really know how to say this, and I suppose the words don't make a great deal of sense, but in an instant, the flower and I were one. But not the flower alone, but the bee and the brook and the forest and the ground and the rocks and everything else. More than that, the mountain, the earth, the universe and I were one. The truth that nothing is external to consciousness became a living fact again as this very consciousness I am. And there was no space. There was no distance to measure, no separation between the bee, the brook, the wood. And of course, because there was no space, there was no time either. Well, in that moment, the lesson of giving became more apparent. Giving is simple, honest being, the identity that one is. Of course, that's not all there is to giving. There is the tangible gift. There is the gift to Caesar, that which is Caesar's. But the giving that I'm talking about here is just the honest being, the identity that one is. This giving is without regard or regret. It is without purpose or motive. This giving wants nothing in return because it knows that all already is, already a fact, already here as only. Well, that little flower, hardly as big as the tip of a twig, blooming without regard or regret for where it was or who passed by, bestowing praise or withholding praise. It was simply busy being a flower, and it would have bloomed its heart out if no one had ever come its way. And the bee worked to the resistlessness of the blossom, which held itself open, and it did not withhold either its nectar or its fragrance or its beauty. It gave all, and it did all these things by the irresistible, effortless action of gently, effortlessly, simply being itself, just being a small blue flower, a flower being a flower. And I couldn't help but note that the flower had no responsibility in the matter, because isness is being the flower and the awareness wherein it grows. Well, so it is that as one returns from the far country of make-believe, identity, apart from isness, he likewise returns to the honesty which is simplicity, and to the simplicity which is honesty. As one consciously is the identity that reality is being, he finds himself giving, as the flower does, as the mountain does, as the earth does, by just being what one is being. Now this effortless activity maybe appears as writing or reading or lecturing or answering questions or corresponding or watching flowers or children or grandchildren grow and prosper, discovering new wonders, but all the while it is the action of truth. It's the action of reality, of isness, God perceiving the illimitable aspects of himself, of itself. This conscious awareness right here, right now, the one you are, is that holy action in action. Well, there is not a generation gap. I don't care who says there is. There is not a generation gap. There is not a warfare between youth and the elders. How can there be such a thing really going on when God is all? Well, there can't. It's as simple as that. There just can't. What seems to be such a struggle is something other than appears, and more, much more. Well, what? What is it? The world scene is the echo of our own experience. The activity out there is our externalized experience, seen in tangible retrospect. The appearance of life out there is the tangible appearing of this life I am, this life you are. The soldiers, the kids, the police officers, the friends or the enemies are not separate from this one. Here and now, presently, making these words, listening to these words, being these words. That awareness out there is this awareness appearing tangibly in time. The multitudes that we see everywhere are the tangible appearing of the single, only identity, the perfect selfhood. Now listen, the perfect selfhood is not self-destructive. It is not doing itself in. It is not waging warfare with itself. It is not even developing and growing apace. It is not even doing away with false beliefs. Only the belief of false beliefs is ending. Self is about the business of disclosing itself to itself. Self is being itself perfectly. Self is not being a false belief to be destroyed. All right, now this doesn't mean that the sites of a youthful rebellion or the communist incursion into what we call our way of life is an illusion. It's not a mesmeric belief, an error, or any other such thing, and most especially it's not a world belief over which we have no dominion or control. Appearances are first understood to be appearances. That is, just a sight being a sight. And then the appearance will be understood for what it is in fact, and not what it seems in appearance. Now, once it is seen for that is for what it is, and lived as that, rather than as what it seems, we will have done all that is required of us. We will not longer be bothered by that appearance. In fact, chances are we'll be blessed by it, or see it change to something else, or at the very least it will appear in a new, more revealing light. And it is certain to appear as infinitely more than anything that we could have ever hoped to see or tried to demonstrate. Well, once again, I'm asked, what is this mess that we see going on in the world? Well, each must answer this for himself. Because how can I tell anyone anything other than what I see? I can't tell you what you see. I tell you what I see. Well, what do I see? What I see out there is the retrospective resurgence of my own youthfulness. The retrospective resurgence of my own youthfulness. It is the retrenchment of my own crystallization of old. I see the shell of old landmarks splitting and being left behind. I see the eternal and already perfect intangible isness or balance presenting itself tangibly. I see the belief of values being removed from appearances, to whom or to which belief had given all kinds of idiotic false values. I see the tangible day approaching for the general recognition that a child shall lead them, that lest ye become as children, ye shall in no way enter the kingdom. I see in the out there my own intellectual defeats of times past. I see that which hath been is now, and that which hath already been is now. I see the already perfection of immutable changelessness appearing to belief as an overturning and an overturning until he comes whose right it is. That is, in simple words, I see light becoming tangibly discerned. I see deific good going on. I see absolute perfection disclosing itself tangibly. And of course, to disclose itself tangibly, it requires the sequence of events. As Aldous Huxley said, that sequence that tangibility requires. And what I see out there is not bad. It is not awful. It is not unreal or just a dream going on. It is perfection, being perfect. Neither real nor unreal, but infinitely more. Infinitely more. But it's only just the tangible. There's a lot more than just the tangible, you know. There's the intangible, too. Well, this is the calm view that, or the quiet view, or the balanced view, or whatever you want to call it, that permits me to stand as an unaffected, unjudging witness of the scene I am. And to be a comfort to those who suspect that there must be more in God's design than a world so apparently bent on nutty self-destruction.